has to do with the fact that I put that announcement out about your third exam because you guys did so well on your first two exams. So people are like, maybe I don't need the attendance bonus. So I thought we could talk about that first and talk about what the next couple of classes look like. So first things first, as you guys saw in the announcement, or maybe didn't see, and this is the first time you're hearing about it, we are hiring a second faculty member, which I am so excited about, that we're bringing on a second person. And we have 4 amazing candidates. Usually you only bring in 3, but we had so many great people that we decided to bring in 4. And we were trying to find a place for them to teach, so you guys can give us feedback on how you feel as students, because your feedback is just as important as ours. And this is someone you might be taking future classes from, so I want to make sure you guys have a say in that. Now, because we're doing that, and because we're moving some of the content around, I also wanted to reward you for taking the time to come to class and be involved and be actively listening and giving us that feedback. Is that I want to give you that earned free 100% for attending those 4 sessions, especially since one of those sessions is actually during the time we had scheduled our third exam. So let me pull this up really fast. So you guys can see that. Do this really fast too, so I can see all your lovely faces. And one of the things on here is I was trying to figure out, what are we going to do with the 3 classes we have remaining that are not guest speakers? And I just, to put it in there so we can see all the information together, this is all the remaining information I would have gone over 6 classes that I now have in 3. Now, I don't really want to do that. I don't want to rush the information. And I also feel like I'm not sure how valuable that is if I'm just, okay, we're going to go through 5 chapters now in 3 classes, and then I'm going to make you sit through 4 different people, and they have no specific topic they have to teach on. It's going to be open, which I thought was great for an intro class. You guys can really see their character and what they're passionate about based on what they choose to teach you. So I wanted to see what you guys felt about, because ultimately, if you want us here, each of these next 3 classes, learning this content, I am all for it. Like, I am 100% on board, but I also want to respect your time and the fact that it's going to be maybe a little more challenging to listen to 4 unique people and try to give some sort of assessment. I'm willing to give you guys next week to kind of gather yourself, prep for your other classes, and then be focused for our last 4 classes. So how do you guys feel about not having class on Tuesday and Thursday next week? And you can send me private messages if, say, you don't agree or you want something different. I'm going to try to make videos. I can't guarantee, it's just a lot of content. I can't guarantee I'll get all the videos up. If you're not going to be able to make those 4, you're still required to take the exam, but the material is in the chapters and the PowerPoint, so you can see that as well. So do you guys have any feedback, any opinions, any suggestions, anything you guys are looking for?
Wait, I'm just confused. So if we miss next week's classes, then our only opportunity is to do the 4 classes of the guest speakers, and then you have to attend all those in order to get exempt from the exam?
Right, or you can take the exam.
Okay, and it'll.
But we don't necessarily go through all of the material in class time.
So it'd be on us to learn those 4.
Okay.
And I would try to upload videos for that content, because I have all the PowerPoints ready to go. I have the material ready to go. I don't know how quickly I can get that material recorded and put up. So I don't want to promise that it would all be available, but my goal would be to have all that content finished and recorded and up before the 3rd exam. And if we don't have class next week, I can use that class time to record those in case someone isn't able to make the 4 classes, and that way they have access to all the content rather than trying to cram it into such a short amount of time.
I mean, if it's easier for you for us to not have classes.
Well, I promise I'm still working. I'm still going to get you the content as I can. That just gives me a little time to put it together. And it gives you a little time to, if you are going to take the option of the free 100 to just take a breather before we have those 4 guest speakers.
I mean, I'm fine with it.
Could we do both? Like, could we take the exam and could we just go to the meetings?
Yeah, I mean, you're welcome to take the exam, but if you come to the 4 meetings, you're automatically guaranteed 100.
Okay.
So if you come to the 4 meetings and you have your video on and you do all that stuff, you're guaranteed that 100%. It's given
Okay.
to you. I will be keeping notes and making sure and all that kind of stuff. And the feedback is super simple. I don't know what the form's going to look like at this point, but essentially you're just telling us whether or not you like this person, what you like about them. Would you want them to come here? So it's not like you have to do a formal feedback. Like, it's not like you're doing a write-up of each person. You're just kind of just, I like this person because of these things. So it's more of like a survey than a true formal feedback.
Cool.
But of course, I mean, you're always welcome to take the exam. Like, it will be available to you to take the exam, but you are guaranteed that 100 if you attend those 4 classes. Now, of course, I want to make sure you guys know I have these criteria on here. I plan to stick to this. Sometimes things happen, we'll see, whatever, but this is really what I need. I need you guys to be at all 4 sessions on time. I really want to be able to start exactly at 11:20, so I recommend 5 minutes early, just so you're logged in, you're ready to go, not a big deal. Make sure you're doing that. Stay for the entire class, don't leave, because that's also how we're getting feedback. I also don't know if they're going to go the full time span or not. They might be a little shorter, whatever. Make sure you have your camera on and that you're professional. So it's really easy to get sidetracked and start talking to people off screen or whatever else is going on. Try to stay really fine-tuned because this is such an important decision. And this is really important for these 4 individuals too. This is their life. This is their career. And you guys think it's hard to get a job in the industry. Academia is a nightmare because, you know, like I said, I think we had over 85 applicants for 1 position and they were all qualified. And this is really important to all 4 of these individuals. So I want to give them that full attention, because if we are saying no to someone, I want you to say, yes, I was fully engaged in what you were talking about. Just of the 4 people, you were not my choice, and this is why. And I want to give them that respect because this is such an important impact on their lives. For example, one of the candidates we have interviewing with us lives in South Africa. So he would have to move his entire life away from his home country here. So that this kind of decision is really important for these people. So I want to give them that time, which is why I say, have your camera on, look professional, stay engaged in what's going on. And then of course the feedback, like I said, it's pretty simple. It's going to be at the end of the session and you're going to basically be answering some sort of survey. I don't know what that looks like yet. We'll get that all figured out before we actually have someone teaching us.
Are we going to have to say the feedback to them?
No.
Or like, okay,
Nope.
that's what I thought you said.
Completely anonymous. They will never see your feedback in any way, shape, or form. It's we collect that and it goes into our decision we make because we look at more than just the teaching. We have a whole list of things we need this person to be qualified to do. And so this is just one element of that. And so we get that feedback from you guys and see what did you think? Because what I think is great teaching may not be interactive for you. Other thoughts, suggestions, comments, concerns?
I definitely think just taking next week off, like reviewing the content that you put up, videos in our own time, because like already looking at my schedule for next week, obviously I have planned for this class, but it's just going to be a crazy week in general. So being able to, watch those videos in my own time would be really helpful. So.
Okay. Yeah, and I know some people don't like the video thing. They like the interactive class, and I try to accommodate as much as I can with going on, but this is just such a big change for everyone. And we have a lot going on with all these candidates coming in that I want to make sure I'm getting you guys the best content available. And if I try to cram entire modules into one class, I don't think that's better than necessarily doing the videos. However, if you're struggling for some reason with some content and you really want me to go over it with you, I'll have one-on-one sessions with you, no problem. I'm always happy to do that. And then also, hopefully you guys will be coming to the 4 candidate sessions, so you get that automatic 100 anyway. And you guys are rocking it on the exams anyway. It's looking good. So I'm not worried about those who need to take the final. There are very few of you who would even probably consider it at this point. The attendance points still go. So in addition to the 100, you also are still on par for those attendance points if you've been attending class all along. And we have your networking assignment is due today. And your reflective essay is due on the 20th. So you still have two kind of things going on there too. So any concerns? That's my big thing. Any of you are like, I'm really uncomfortable with this?
I'm so sorry. My internet cut out whenever you're explaining what all this is. So is it that we aren't going to be meeting at the regular class time next week? Okay. And then just watching the videos
Yeah.
and like reading the textbook and then be here for the candidate thing. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's funny, Ashley, because you emailed me last night and I was like, no, we're having all our classes. And then you got me thinking about it. And I'm like, how could I most productively use that time to still get you the content without trying to push too much in a small amount of time? So actually, you were the one who catalyzed me thinking maybe we shouldn't have class and I can do this another way, be a little more creative with the time that we have. So yes, you're right on, Ashley. And so Ashley, to make sure next week, and I'll put announcement on what do you call it, D2L, that next week we won't have it. In fact, I'm almost thinking that because leadership and management is so long, do you guys want to do part of that now? And I won't push it, and I'll probably end just at the leadership section, and then we can do management via video. You guys okay with that? Cool. Any other comments, concerns, questions before we move on to that then? All right. So with that note, let me pull up the PowerPoint. So in the first two sections of the class, we had hospitality, where we looked at general hospitality traits. We went into restaurants, hotels, and clubs, which are three of the big areas of hospitality. Obviously, there's so much more, so many other areas. These are just the big ones. Then we went into travel and tourism and events, where we focused on looking at different elements of travel and tourism and a little bit of events. And we had Tiffany come in and speak to us about her events experience. And then for this last section, what I wanted to focus on is more general traits: leadership, management, communication, planning, control. And this is true regardless of what field you go into. And truly, honestly, in a lot of ways, regardless of whether or not you stay in tourism and hospitality. However, it's really essential, especially with leadership and management in our field, because you're going to be managing a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds. And it's one of the things that's really exciting about this, but it's also one of the challenging things, because we work with people on all levels of the spectrum. So, you know, if you're an engineer and you're managing other engineers, everyone has the same education, everyone has the same background. That is not true in hospitality and tourism. And so it makes it fun and dynamic and exciting, but also very crucial that you know what kind of leader you want to be and how to continue to improve. So a lot of traits for leadership are inherent and intrinsic. However, they can also be trained and taught, which is why we talk about leadership all the time, because if you couldn't change it and couldn't be better, then what's the point of learning about leadership? So first thing I want to do is brainstorm with you guys. What do you think are some characteristics of leadership? And I will type them out.
Positive attitude.
Oh, and it starts. What else?
Patience.
Driven. Ooh.
Driven. Did I hear patience?
Yes.
What else?
Organized.
Organized.
Someone who takes initiative.
Optimistic.
Knowledgeable.
Reliable.
Oh, reliably. What else?
Responsible.
Problem solver.
Like time management.
It's a pretty good list. So of these, which ones do you think are the most important and the most crucial? If you could only pick 4 or 5 of these, which 4 or 5 would you pick?
Reliable.
Reliable, okay.
I think patience is definitely a big one. If you're leading people that don't know what they're doing, you got to be patient with them.
Yeah,
Responsibility and I think organization.
okay. And one more.
Probably positive attitude.
All right, awesome. So what do you guys think of the list we made? Pretty good.
It's a tall order.
It's a tall order. It is, isn't it? And it's funny because we can come up with so many things that we're looking for in leaders around us. And then we think about it and say, how can we embody all of those things all of the time? And that's part of being a leader, is that you're constantly trying to work on having those characteristics, and you don't always succeed because you're exactly right, Olivia. It is a tall order to be all of these things all the time, which is why it takes time and caring and compassion and all these things to want to be a good leader. And some of these things are going to be easier than others, depending on your personality compared to other things. Maybe you're not an overly positive person. You tend to see the negative in things, but positivity is part of leadership because you're telling people there's still opportunities, there's still growth, there's still a vision that even when things get tough, we're going to keep persevering. And think about when COVID-19 hit and you're having to let people go. You're having to fire half of your staff within the first 2 months. Staying positive through that and keeping them still trusting you that you're going to be able to lead them to where they need eventually in time. Patience, we talked about that. The responsible, reliable, and I would add accountability in that. Accountability is one of the most challenging things for people in general because it's accepting that either you've made a mistake or someone on your team has made a mistake, taking responsibility for it and doing something about it. And that can be very challenging. So the quote I really like about it and by the way, Kaylin, I did see your question and I'm going to answer that at the end. I want to just bump that up. Where are you, Kaylin? There you are. Yeah, I saw it. I'll answer it at the end.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So I love this quote. Experience is a hard teacher because she gives the test first and the lesson afterwards. And I hadn't seen that before, and it was in your textbook, and it is so right. What does this quote mean to you guys when you see it, when you hear this?
Kind of feel like you're going to go through life without knowing all like the rules and like having a playbook, but still having to like go through it before, like it says, knowing the lesson and like how to do it. And
Yeah, it's this idea that life is going to throw you things like COVID-19, and you have no idea how to truly be a leader during that time. How do you persevere? How do you stay positive? How are you still reliable? How can people depend on you? And how are you accountable when you've never faced this before? And then you learn afterwards, maybe what you should have done or what you could have done differently or what you could have done better. And you'll face that a lot in life, not just in your careers, but in your personal lives. Hindsight 2020, looking back, if you ever become a parent, this is part of that too. You can only prepare so much. You can come into a classroom and we can talk about leadership and we can role play scenarios and we can talk about HR and we can talk about how you're going to deal with a problem of a guest coming in angry or an employee coming to you and saying, hey, someone is harassing me. You know, we can role play till we're blue in the face, but it's never the same as when someone's in front of you and you're having to make that decision and you don't necessarily know if it's the right decision. So the best we can do is keep working on and keep practicing, because we're constantly learning and constantly evolving. And then part of that accountability is saying, maybe I didn't make the best choice. I recognize that this is what I would do differently next time. And this is how I'm going to try to fix the decision I did make to make it better moving forward. So I absolutely love this. And it's something to keep in mind as kind of a philosophy in life, that it is okay to fail and it is okay to make a mistake. Being a leader isn't not making mistakes. Being a leader is saying, I learned something, I can do it better, and I can still improve things to be all these different qualities that I've said are important, that I have to come back to this and say, okay, I didn't do what I necessarily needed to. I learned a hard lesson. You know, how do I stay optimistic and have a positive attitude about those things and still get the problem solving that I need? So all these things come back into that. For the Marines, we talk a lot about leadership in the military because of their structure and hierarchy. This is in their leadership traits. And you'll notice it's slightly different than the kind of list we created because they have a slightly different kind of job. However, I would say that a lot of these qualities and characteristics still stand regardless of whether or not you're faced with life and death, which they probably are in the military a whole lot more than we are in hospitality and tourism. But it's still true. You know, the qualities that are coming out here are very similar to the list that we created. Decisiveness, problem solving, making decisions, being dependable. That was on all of our lists. Integrity, that's a huge one too. People have to trust you. People have to believe that when you say something, you will follow through with what you say and that you're fair and consistent in what you do. That's part of the justice as well. Anything on here stand out to you that you hadn't thought about before, or maybe you don't necessarily agree with, or you do agree with a lot and you just, oh yeah, I forgot about that. So anything on this list that really speaks to you?
I would say unselfishness is an extremely important trait in any type of leadership role, because when you are a leader, like you have so many people looking up to you, like you can't be selfish in a decision at all to lead them in the right path.
Yeah, it's very true. But you have to also be careful. That's an interesting one, because in some ways, sometimes you do need to be selfish because you need to really, you need to put your employees up there, you need whoever you're leading, but you also have to make sure that you're meeting your own needs. And I think sometimes what happens with leaders is they think if I'm completely unselfish and put myself last all the time, that it will naturally work itself out. And I think there needs to be a balance with that too. What else?
Personally, I really like integrity on there because, I mean, integrity is doing what's right when nobody's looking. But then as a leader, like that's everybody looking. So
Yeah.
you have to have it on both sides of the coin.
Yeah. And the truth is, if you're a leader, they're always watching you. I don't care if you're alone, someone's watching you. Someone is looking at what you're doing, because you're going to have to answer for it. So I agree with you. Integrity is one of the most important things I see on this list, definitely. What else? What about endurance? What do you guys think about that?
I think that's definitely a big one, maybe at least in my industry now, which is somewhat similar to the tourism and hospitality, because like my manager, I mean, she's always the one that has to be here no matter what. Like if it's snowing and we can't make it to work, like that's kind of a dumb example, but like she powers through nonstop. She always has to do like, you know, at the end of the day, it's on her if someone else can't do it, kind of thing.
Yeah, you're the first one to arrive and the last one to leave. You have to always be available and always ready to make those decisions when they're needed. Whenever there's a crisis, you're the one who's on call, and you do have to have that endurance. And part of that is you have to love what you do. You at least have to like what you do. If you truly do not like what you're doing, you cannot be a leader, because you just can't have the qualities you need if you don't enjoy what you're doing at some level. So keep that in mind, that if you start getting into a position where you're working a job and you just don't like it, there's nothing about it that is connecting to you, there's nothing that is forcing you to stay there. Find new opportunities. Although I will state, it's easier to get a job if you have a job. So don't quit first. Line up your second opportunity and then move on to a new direction. But yeah, you have to want to do it. And that's part of that endurance area. Yeah, very good. You notice how there's not a lot of compassion, empathy, and caring on this list. A little bit different from the leadership that we're used to. But loyalty is on there. And that's a little different too. Anything else? What about tact? What is tact?
Okay, personally, I love that tact is on this list because I swear I am constantly just like, oh my word, how tacky is that? I mean, I can't remember the exact definition of it, but just, being there, being together, having grace and dignity, no matter what the situation, and kind of calm, cool, and collected, but also like opposite too. So it's a combination of things.
Yeah. And it's also knowing when to say the right things and when to just shut your mouth, not say anything.
When to hold them and when to fold them.
Yeah. So I always think of Bambi. If you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all. But it's a little more than that. It's kind of this concept of, I have an employee and they're not meeting expectations, and I need to tell them. How do I tell them in a way that is caring, compassionate, empathizing, but still maintaining our standards and our rules? And that is really tough to do. So for example, when we worked at the restaurant, we had to be careful because if you had a lot of strong body odor, or you wore a lot of perfume, or maybe you didn't have the perfect hygiene, that was very off-putting to diners. You don't really want someone to serve you who you feel like maybe isn't as clean as they should be. And so my general manager would never have those conversations with females. He would have his female managers talk to females about it. And he wanted me to talk to one of our female employees about brushing her teeth. So in that situation, I have to have a lot of tact, because I don't know where she's coming from. I don't know if maybe she is and she has an issue that we don't know about or something like that. And so you have to come up with a middle ground to be able to say, we need this to happen, but in a way that's not offensive to that person. And that's what tact is. Being highly political, being able to use words very well in communication, and being fair in that communication. So that is something you work on over time and you continue improving. When I first was a teacher, my communication via email was very curt, just because I was just answering very quickly and just getting the emails out. And I realized that the way it was being portrayed maybe wasn't what the student was looking for. And over time, I had to learn to be more tactful in my email communication, to make sure the student understood where I was coming from and that it wasn't as curt as it was sounding in the email. So you will constantly learn, you will constantly grow, and you will constantly make mistakes and then have to continue to improve them. I think Nicole just came in. I sent Nicole an email early on and it wasn't very nice. And I sent her an email right after that and said, I was a jerk. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that. And, just taking that accountability, because sometimes you make mistakes and it's part of that tact issue. So, yeah. All right, moving on. So some common leadership practices, this goes hand in hand with the traits and qualities. However, what's different about this is about how we interact with others, as opposed to qualities inherent in the person. So for example, challenging the process. One of the great things about leaders is the leaders don't like to hear no. So you say no, I say, how do we get around it? How do we come up with creative solutions? How do we think outside the box? If we can't do that, well, what could we do differently? How could we make a new solution? So that's one of the huge characteristics of a leader, is that they're willing to say, I hear no, but nothing is permanent. We can look at this. There are some things that are black and white, but most of the world's a little bit of gray. So we can figure out how to maneuver around that and to come up with a new solution. And that's part of being a leader. Have a shared vision. So know what you want to accomplish in whatever task you're doing that you're a leader for, and sharing those with others around you. So simply stating, I know what I want to happen in the shift today, and this is what I want the shift to look like. I'm going to share that with you, and we're going to all work towards a common goal because we all have a common goal. Enable others to act. This is through delegation, empowerment, letting people make mistakes and being there to help them improve and practice, not holding them back from the full potential that they have, giving them that space to do those things. Model the way. Again, that integrity element, they're always watching. Anything you do, you are telling them that this is acceptable behavior. So by your behavior, you're modeling that behavior. So for example, a really stupid small example, in the classroom, I decided I want to have videos on. And so rather than when I first come in that first 10 minutes and I'm trying to take attendance, I'm doing all this stuff, I turn my video on. So if you want people to have that behavior, you have to model that behavior because you are the leader and they are following what you do. And then encourage the heart, encourage people to grow, encourage people to be better. One of the things that people do is they say, oh, well, this employee is really great and I love them in this job and I need them for this. And so they prevent them from learning other jobs, or they prevent them from maybe taking a promotion outside the company, and they hold that person back because, well, I need that person. A true leader says, my goal is to have you continue to grow and to give you as much as I can while you're here, and know that you might go somewhere else, but that I had a part in that. And then I can train the next person coming in. So encouraging people to have leadership traits in themselves as being a leader as well. So just basic definition of leadership: a process by which a person with a vision is able to influence the activities and outcomes of others in a desired way. So we're going to look at two different kinds of leadership. These are common kind of dichotomy of leader is a transactional leader versus a transformational leader. Now, a lot of the literature you'll read will be like transactional bad, transformational good. And I would argue that there are going to be times when you want to be transactional and there are times you're going to want to be transformational. And that if you truly have a good leadership toolbox, you can be both. So what a transactional leader does is they take transactions, this for that, and through that, they motivate people to certain actions. So if I offer people bonuses, or a version of transactional is, hey, you come to all 4 of our guests that we're going to be inviting in, I give you 100. That's a transaction, right? So you do this, I give you that in return. So we see that a lot with bonuses. We see that a lot with maybe even promotion opportunities. This tends to be a very short-term focus. It's not a long-term change. You're not really looking at intrinsic motivation. It's extrinsic motivation. Again, you're giving some sort of a benefit or bonus in return for some sort of behavior. There's a lot of rewards in that, and you're maintaining the status quo. And again, for short-term things, that actually makes the most sense. You don't necessarily always need long-term change in everything that you're doing. And you're really focusing on whatever the desired behavior in the moment. So if we're talking about a single shift, and I'm going to go back to the restaurant because it's really easy because we're moving so fast paced. And I have a morning shift to afternoon shift, and I really want to encourage them to sell our special for today because we have extra tilapia and we want to make sure we use it all and we don't have a lot of food waste. So I say, all right, I'm going to have a competition. Whoever can sell the most of our special today gets a free special themselves, in return. So I am promising some sort of transaction is contingent on reward. I want them to learn to upsell. I want to focus on that kind of behavior. I want them to start looking at marketing at the table and how they interact with that. And we maybe have some talk about how that can happen. And then I reward people for that positive behavior, and it becomes fun, becomes challenging. It's this transactional leadership. Now, if I wanted that to be long-term change that I want people to do all the time, I would look more at a transformational leadership. And transformational leadership tends to be more of a one-on-one basis going back to encouraging the heart and building leadership qualities in the people that you're managing, this is much more challenging than transactional because it's not a promise of you perform this behavior, I give you this kind of outcome, where there's these specific measurable outcomes, which is why transformational leadership is harder. It's not as measurable. And if you take capstone with me, you will hear this time and time again. You cannot manage what you can't measure. So it's very difficult to do this, but what happens in transformational leadership is that you are, through empowerment, encouragement, modeling these behaviors, enabling others to act, all these things we're talking about, you are able to stimulate people and you're able to encourage them to become leaders themselves and to become better and actually be able to do the job. So one of the great things about encouraging leadership in your employees, even if they don't necessarily have titles, is that you can then leave. If you have a job where you have to manage 50 people and you have to leave the store or the place because your shift's over, or you just need an hour to go run an errand or something like that, can you trust your employees to run the business in your absence? And if you can't say yes, then you're not a leader. Because a leader says, I'm going to make sure that my employees could do the job without me. And they're going to still enact those behaviors without me here because I haven't instilled in them this transformational leadership style where they know what they should be doing and they are the leaders themselves, and therefore they are modeling the same behavior that I have been modeling for them and that I want them to perform. So let me see. I have to like move your faces a lot, so you can see, make sure I'm not missing anything on the slide. Yeah, okay. So these are some other common traits. We've talked a lot about traits. I'm just pull a couple others in here. And this is a little bit less about the qualities that a leader has and a little bit more about traits that are commonly seen in leaders that perform well. And again, this doesn't mean you can't learn them or grow into them, but it's something to recognize. And this is something we talked about in the very first class, understanding your strengths and weaknesses and knowing that if I don't have that strength, it is something I have to compensate for. And if I have to compensate for it, I have to find a creative solution around it. So for one, high ego strength. I know this seems like, oh, we always talk about ego being bad. Well, there are different levels of ego. You can be proud of what you accomplish. You can speak out about what you accomplish, but you also have to be willing to share that ego with others around you. And so there has to be a balance in that. But the leaders who are true, well known for their leadership traits do have high ego. They're willing to say, I am good at what I do. I'm proud of myself. I'm very sure of myself. So that's a common trait we see. Strategic thinking. So thinking long-term, thinking about goal setting, thinking about SMART goals, thinking about how to accomplish certain tasks, staying away from just focusing in the moment, but looking at the bigger picture. So leaders tend to have that strategic vision. Orientation towards the future. Yes, I'm going to measure what happened in the past and see whether I was not successful, but the whole point of doing that is so I can keep moving forward. What can I keep doing to improve in the future? Understanding basic human nature. So what motivates people, how to talk to people, how to have tact, how to understand that different people have different motivations at different points in their lives. So what motivates one employee isn't the same as another. So if you have one employee, young, they're not married, they don't have kids, they come into the workplace all the time, they're always picking up extra shifts, they want more autonomy, they want more leadership roles, give them more responsibilities. But then maybe you have another employee, they're recently married, they're having new kids, they need a little bit more flexibility in their schedule. Then you understand that what motivates them is a workplace where they have that flexibility. And so you have all sorts of employees with all sorts of different needs in their life of what they're looking for. And your goal is to understand what is driving them to behaviors so that you can put them in a position to be successful. Because a lot of times it's not that an employee couldn't be successful, it's that we are not putting them in a position where they're going to succeed. So it is our goal to make sure we never put them in a place where they cannot succeed. Strong connections. You build connections with other people. You can't be a leader without people. So networking, being able to have your employees trust you, have your management trust you, have your stakeholders trust you and the decisions that you're making. And that goes hand in hand also with political astuteness, knowing when to say things, knowing who to partner with, knowing who to be associated with. I think this is a hard one for a lot of people, is that the people you are associated with will brand who you are as a person as well. So if you have people in your life who are not positive influences on your life or seen positively as a connection to you, then one of the hardest things you have to do is divorce yourself from that person and move away from that person so that you can shine in your own light. And that can be very challenging, because maybe someone's been connected with you for a long time, you have a long history, but you have to look at what is best for you and for the organizations that you work for and for your career. And that's one of the hardest things to do, say, well, we can't have that relationship anymore. And then the ability to use power of efficiency and good for the larger organization. So you have to be willing to, and this a little bit goes into that unselfishness, be willing to sometimes put the organization needs above your own and say, if the organization needs this, then I'm willing to put off my own needs. Now, where this is not true is when it comes to integrity, ethics, and morals. So if a company does not stand for what you believe in, you should never put aside anything for the quote unquote good of the larger organization. You have to stay true to yourself. And that's about finding the right job and the right company to work for. So some examples: Peter Drucker, known as the American father of management or something like that. Of course, Bill Marriott, Horst Schultz, great speaker. I saw him speak. We talked a little bit about him back in the very beginning. And then Herb Keller. You guys know where Herb Keller is, or where he was? He's the founder of Southwest Airlines, which of course, when we talk about leadership, we talk about Southwest Airlines and Herb Keller all the time, because he did flying differently. It's changing a little bit now, coming a little more corporate, but originally it was definitely very, very different. And here are some habits that you can start working on now. Again, it doesn't matter if you have that title or not, you have to work at leadership to be a leader. And these are some of the things you can do right now to move yourself in that direction. Schedule. This goes back to organization and time management, that you are creating a schedule for yourself and maintaining it, sticking to it. If you miss a deadline you set for yourself internally, going back and making sure it still happens. One of the hardest things that will happen over time is you'll get more and more responsibility. Nicole, I'm going to pick on you again. You are right there. You have your own business, you're going to school, you have your kids, you have a lot of these things. And as you start to get more into life, you have more and more responsibility, and you have to do what Nicole's been doing and saying, okay, how do I manage that? How do I make sure I'm meeting all the requirements? And that goes back to creating a schedule for yourself and time management. And you can do those now, and you set yourself up for learning those skills, maybe when it's easier than as you get further in life and it becomes more difficult. Eating healthy. I know this sounds like, okay, what does that have to do with leadership? Taking care of yourself, taking care of your body, that is a step in the right direction. I will tell you right now, if you look at a broad cross section of major leaders that are known, not just in hospitality and tourism, but across the board, CEOs, all these different people in different positions, they almost unanimously are fit and healthy. Just something about that personality, that ego, that strategy, and that vision. People tend to say, okay, I'm going to eat right, I'm going to exercise, and I'm going to sleep right. So those are things you can practice now in school. And I say that being someone who, back when I was in school, I went out with my friends all the time and didn't sleep enough. So it's easy for me to say now, oh yeah, make sure you eat right and exercise and sleep right. And I didn't necessarily always do those things, but just something to keep in mind. Studying, preparing yourself, learning that way. Communication, learning the proper ways to communication. Reading. Well, I mean, fiction, sure, but I mean, just reading the content that's available to you and learning from it. Finding mentors, and then also managing your money wisely. So if you can't manage your own money, how are you going to manage money for an organization? There are quite a few companies that will look at your credit history to determine whether or not you can be a manager for them. I don't know if anyone's ever told you that, but they will ask for your credit history. So manage your money wisely. All right, how are we doing on time? Do you guys want to keep going? Or do you want to stop here for today? Well, no one said no, so we're going to keep going. We're going to go ahead and finish. I think we can finish this one. So for management, now another dichotomy you'll see is, oh, some people are leaders and some people are managers. And just like transactional and transformational leadership, I would argue that there are going to be times when management is really what you need to be doing rather than necessarily being the leader, quote unquote. I mean, you're always a leader, you always have those qualities, but there's nothing wrong with the word management and there's nothing wrong with managing, especially if it's done right. So I think management a lot of times gets this negative connotation because it's performed very poorly, but I don't agree with that. I think the management is the task that you perform, where leadership is the qualities that you exhibit. So when you are managing something, whether or not you have a title that is management, you are basically coordinating and overseeing activities of others. And you're trying to make sure that is done efficiently and effectively. And so that goes back to this cycle of what we talk about in management, that you're planning for, organizing, you're making those decisions, you're looking, and again, you're hopefully connecting that to the strategy as a leader, that you're both a leader and a manager. You have to communicate that to your team, get them to actually do it. That's what we call motivation, whether that's saying the right things communication wise for them to have intrinsic motivation or offering extrinsic motivation. Control is measuring whether or not you're successful in meeting your needs that you have planned and made decisions for, and then establishing a direction for future movement. So these are all really important things that you need to do, and it's much more task-based as opposed to quality-based. And so leadership without task driving it really doesn't necessarily accomplish goals either. So you really need to have both qualities hand in hand. So when we talk about efficiency and efficacy, we're talking about this. It's about doing the right things and doing them at the right time, or for the first time. So if you're efficient, you only need to do things once. So we call this the drift. Do it right the first time. That's what you want to accomplish. I want to get it right done the first time, because part of that is also going to be effectiveness, but it's also going to be less of a waste of resources, which when I talk about resources, I'm talking about time, I'm talking about money, I'm talking about people and labor, I'm talking about actual physical, tangible goods, I'm talking about satisfaction. All of it goes into doing it right the first time. And effectiveness is how quickly can you do it? So just because you do it right the first time, but it takes, so you're, we're talking about now a hotel, and I'm checking someone into a hotel. I'm going to check them into the right room the first time. Great. But if it takes you 30 minutes to do it, then it's not effective because you're not really meeting the standards. So you need to have both of these things. It needs to be both done the right way, but also in the right amount of time. And that's being both effective and efficient. And then again, with that efficiency, you have limited resources. And when we talk about resources, we're talking about mostly these things: time, money, people, and equipment. So keep in mind your resources, especially in this industry, a lot of it depends on people and time. Those two are some of the most crucial. Money will fall in line with that. So for example, part of the efficiency of people is labor costs. So that ties hand in hand with your money and your capital. Really quickly, I have this word capital in there. I always realize some people don't know. What does capital mean? No? So it essentially is the money that you have, but it's in a special pot. So the special pot of money that is given typically by investors for some sort of larger project. And so we tend to call that capital, but essentially it's money. So your liquid resources. What is liquidity?
The amount of assets that you can basically turn to cash immediately.
Yeah. So liquid is something you can spend right now. Like I have it ready to go. I can use it. Whereas in other capital can be tied up in, say, your real estate or other investments that you have that you would have time to turn it over into liquid cash. So we also talk, when we talk about liquidity, we talk about cash flow. So an operation like a hotel or restaurant that has constant cash flow, because we have so many vendors we work with, we have to have liquidity. And that's part of the problem that we've been seeing with COVID-19 is that there's no cash flow. And because of that, operations that maybe could withstand longer aren't able to, because they aren't able to pay the vendors when they need to pay them. All right, so this is the obligatory managers versus leader chart. Again, I think you need to do a little bit of both. One doesn't really exist without the other. You need to be able to do both. So for management, you're working in the system versus the leadership working on the system. Again, what do you mean no? So if you're a manager in the moment and the answer is no, then the answer is no. But if you're a leader, well, the answer is no, but does it really have to be no? Can I change that? And that's the difference between working in the system and working on the system. And there are going to be times you want to do both. Reactionary for management versus creating opportunities. So a lot of times with management, it's in the moment. We have to make a quick decision. We already have our strategy. Hopefully it falls in line with what our leadership goals are. And then as a leader, I can take a little more time and say, how do I create opportunities to maybe not have that problem happen in the future? Or I see a great opportunity that I want to capitalize on. And so I'm going to continue doing that. That goes hand in hand with our controlling risk within management and the seeking opportunities within leadership. Then enforcing rules. When we talk about working in the system, enforcing organizational rules versus a leader maybe challenging those rules or changing the organizational rules to meet what we need to work on the system, to improve the system. Seek and then follow direction versus providing the vision and strategy. So as a leader, you're going to create the vision and strategy everyone else is following. And as a manager, your goal is to follow the strategy and vision that's been put in place. So for management, controlling people and pushing them in the right direction versus motivating people to satisfy basic human needs. This is a huge difference between management and leadership, and why I say you need to be able to do both. That if you are always focused on motivating the basic human need, you aren't able to fulfill the function you need to do the day-to-day operations. So that's why you need to be able to do both. You need to be able to say, how do I motivate people to meet their basic needs in life? Happiness, satisfaction, love, community, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, versus how do I get them to do the task I need them to do in this moment? And then we can reassess whether or not we need to change the task later. Hey, I need you to pick up an extra shift and work double for 12 hours because I'm short on staff. I need that fixed right now. I can't wait for it. I can't wait for the motivation of basic human needs in that moment. So being able to do both and know when to use which quality or characteristic. Coordinated effort versus inspire, achievement, and energize people. Same kind of concept. And then we're going to actually end this with ethics. And the reason we're going to do this is not only is it in your textbook, but ethics is a very important topic for me. And I believe very strongly in this. I don't think we talk about ethics enough. So the concept of ethics is essentially a set of guiding principles or moral principles that help you determine right from wrong, even when you don't have a specific example of that in front of you. So can you determine at any point in time whether or not you should or should not do something? This is often based on your personal values and can vary not only based on the individual, but culturally and what cultural values we have as a society. And so some of the sources of these ethics, sometimes it's from religion, sometimes it's from societal norm. Yes, Kaylin. Sometimes it's from philosophy, and other times it's from literature. So we are constant, and sometimes it's from parents, sometimes it's from the household, right? So where are we getting this set of morals that we are guiding our behaviors on is really dependent on society and the individual and where they're coming from. Now, I'm going to bring up something that is actually relatively controversial. I typically don't do that, but when it comes to ethics just kind of brings this out. I will tell you that the concept of universal preferable behaviors is a philosophical concept that not everyone agrees with. So I'm going to stay away from the controversy. And what I do like about this philosophical framework is that it states that there are behaviors that are universal, regardless of culture, society, and the individual, that are preferable to other behaviors. So, for example, don't inflict harm on others. I would say that not hurting other people is a universal preferable behavior. And therefore, in any decision I make, I would state, am I going to hurt someone? And how do I prevent that? And when I say hurt, the big one for that, for universal preferable behaviors, we're talking physical hurt. You can't always save people's feelings, but the concept of not hurting people physically. Some other things that have been included in universal preferable behaviors is having integrity, respect for human life, that goes back to hurting people, self-control, honesty, courage, and how cruelty is wrong. So if you were to consider some universal preferable behaviors that are part of your moral compass or ethical code, what kinds of things would you consider adding to this list? Or are there things on this list you don't agree with? And it's probably something you've never thought of before. So if you don't have any things readily on mind, that's okay. It's probably a new concept.
This kind of goes with the respect for human life, but like the treat people how you want to be treated kind of thing, golden rule, or whatever.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, part of the controversy comes in, well, how do you determine where the limit for this is? So, for example, on respect for human life, does that start at birth? Does it start before then? I don't want to argue whether or not that's right or wrong, but whether or not wherever you start the life concept, do you respect people in their lives? And then how do you do that? How do you act ethically and morally? But you have to have some guiding principle. And this is saying that that's a guiding principle for that behavior. Other thoughts or comments? Okay, so the reason I bring that up is that how many of you have seen, oh, what's that movie? It has Adam Sandler and he's goofy and he's supposed to happy-go-lucky, Happy Gilmore. Have any of you seen that? A couple of you? Yeah. And there's, yeah, and there's this one scene where he's trying to fight the guy that is the businessman and who's trying to take over all the fortune. And they make the joke of he ends up with a category of ethics in business and he gets like, there's no ethics in business. And the reason why it's really important is if we make ethical decisions in our personal lives, we should therefore also be able to make ethical decisions in our business lives. And in doing so, we would provide a better business across the board. So what kinds of qualities would you, so the ones we just looked at are really more for personal qualities. I mean, cruelty is wrong. It doesn't really fit in a business setting. I think that's kind of a standard, but what would you include in a business setting? And here are some of the things you could consider. I'm not saying they are or aren't part of UPB, but is minimum wage an ethic in business? Is having good working conditions? Is diversity, is sanitation, security, sustainability? So one of the things that you have to think about for yourself and where your moral and ethical code is, you're going to have a personal one, and that is going to play into how you then see your personal ethical code manifest in a business setting and what that looks like. So having a value for human life, does that go hand in hand with minimum wage? Maybe, I don't know. You know, it depends on you and depends on how you interpret those preferable behaviors and how to act ethically in business. So do you guys have any thoughts? That's okay. If you have any thoughts and you want to chat with me any other time or send me a message. I'm always happy to talk about them. All right. The other big thing about it is legal and ethical are two completely different concepts, and people oftentimes will use legal methods to do unethical things. And what I would argue and what I'm going to try to instill in you today is that to be a true leader, you have to have a strong ethical and moral code that transcends what is necessarily legally right. Now, it doesn't mean you should break laws, but it means you should work on the system to change things that are unethical. Because at some point, slavery was legal. That does not make it ethical. That does not make it moral. It does not make it right. So just because it's legal doesn't mean it's right. So legal tends to be just the written down rules and includes some sort of punishment. And it's things that society as a whole has said, we are going to allow these things or not allow these things. And then we have ethics, which is the guideline for your personal behavior. Typically it's not written down. And there's an informal punishment such as social isolation. So being a pariah, something along those lines. And so what we're trying to find is that middle ground that is both legal and ethical and provide us guidance in how we should behave in everyday behaviors and our interactions with people around us. And this is what maintains a stable society. That's right, Kaylee, I'm glad you're back. All right, so we're not going to do this, but what I do encourage you to do, and if we were in class, I would make you do this, but we're not in class, is to research a leader within hospitality and tourism, look at their career and look at why they're known as a leader. So, you know, Herb Keller or Isidore Sharp, these are well-known people in our industry, but why are they still so well-known? Like what about them made them such big leaders that we still talk about them, that they're in our textbooks, that when we bring up leadership, those names come to mind, and look at how their career developed, look at what they accomplished, how they accomplished it, what people say about their leadership style that makes them stand out, what recognitions do they get from others to show that, and what characteristics you admire or would hope to emulate in your own career. And it's through looking at what other people have accomplished that you start to get a sense of what kind of leader you would be, because you cannot be Herb Keller. You cannot be Isidore Sharp. You have to be Kayla Graves. You have to be, you know, Rose. You have to be yourself. But how can you be yourself and truly be this great leader that people respect in your own environment, even if you're not reaching necessarily the status of some of these other people that have reached it? So other comments and things before I get to Kaylin's question, anything about management and leadership? That's okay, Audrey. Am I recording? I hope I'm recording. I think I am. So did you guys learn anything? Was there anything new? Was this just a repeat of things you've heard before? Anything that stood out to you? You guys already in 3 weeks left mode? Yeah, I got you. I feel you. Okay, so I wanted to answer Kaylin's question. Kaylin, you want to go ahead and ask it?
Yeah, I was curious about how like they narrowed down the applicants to these 4 people and what made them stand out across the 85 different people that applied.
All right, so it's a really great question. And I think it's fair for me to answer it before you guys see our candidates. I don't want to bias you in any way because they're all 4 great. One of the big things I was looking for is that we have 3 specializations, and mine is really hospitality. So I wanted to bring someone in from tourism or events, or hopefully both. So that was the first qualifying thing that we're looking for, is that I didn't necessarily completely exclude someone who was hospitality focused, but I needed them to have at least 2 areas. And 3 of the 4 people I'm bringing in have a strong emphasis in events, which was actually my first priority. They're harder to find because it is, so many schools are now adding events to their specialization, and we have such a strong interest in events in our program. So that was the first thing I was looking for, someone who could bring in the events aspect. Then we compared a couple different things. I need them to have a strong research agenda. because this is a tenure track line, and part of being tenure track is that our responsibility isn't to only teach. So teaching is really only like 4/10 of what I do, 40% of what I do. Then another 40% really should be on research, and then 20% on service. Right now, that's kind of weird because I'm the only one running the program, so I do a lot more service, but we have to have a strong research ethic. And then I also wanted to see what their vision was and how they fit in with where our program is going and how they could be a part of that. So I wanted to hear them talk about how they would network for our program and bring in industry partners, what kind of curriculum growth and development they would be interested in pursuing, what areas were most interesting to them, and how they could be a part of the community that we have here at MTSU. So of the 88, we narrowed it down based on those qualities to 12. Then we had a first round of interview for those 12, and that was a 30-minute interview via Zoom. And we asked every single applicant the same 5 questions along those lines as well. And then based on their responses, we picked the top 4 who fit in best with what we're looking for MTSU, our strategic vision, and also what our needs are in the program. And then the 4 that we have left, their next round is typically we would bring them to campus. We're not allowed to do that this time because of COVID, but they are basically going to be with us for 2 full days of Zoom interviews. So they will meet with your class to teach and give us a teaching presentation. They'll also be doing a research presentation. They'll be meeting with the vice provost, the department chair, the dean, our committee multiple times. Basically, they're meeting with everyone because it's a 2-way street. They have to want to come here too. So making sure that we are the right fit for them as they are the right fit for us. And so it's a very long and lengthy process, and it's very challenging, but it's worth it because of the tenure track system that we have in academia. Once you have someone on a tenure track, if they get to year 6 and they're promised tenure, they basically have a job for life as long as they don't do something heinous. So this is someone you could work with for decades down the road. So you want to make sure you're picking the right person. And the university can withhold us doing another interview or another search if this one fails. So for example, we had Dr. Wu, and then we were not allowed to replace her until now because of COVID. So you have to be very careful in making sure you're picking someone who's going to stay and want to be a part of the program. Questions?
So you said each one of them will be, you didn't tell them what to like teach or anything. They're just gonna have their own thing to say.
Yes, so we are sharing the syllabus with them so they know what you've gone through before and what this class is about, and then they get to pick the topic. So when I interviewed at MTSU, I think I taught in an intro class, and I did one of my lessons I typically do in service design and delivery, and I looked at servicescapes. So that was something that it was a nice bound presentation I like to do, and I could do a lot of interactive elements with it. And so that's what I chose to teach on. So they know that we're interested in events, all 4 of them, even the 4th one who is more tourism focused. So I'm curious to see how many of them maybe talk about events in this class. It's kind of what I'm hoping to see, but that doesn't necessarily mean that if they did a different kind of presentation that they're not able to do events. It's just, we'll see how they interact with that. Other thoughts? So you guys get a little behind the scenes look how we hire faculty. It's a very long, lengthy process. And then even once we select someone, it could take 6-8 weeks before contract is signed. So they turn in their applications starting last December. And then they are supposed to start here in August. So it's a long process.
Do you have like specific classes picked out for them to teach? Or?
Oh, I do. I have their schedule. I have the classes they're teaching. I have their schedule. I have everything lined up for them. And then they'll come in and teach what I have set up. Yeah.
Out of curiosity, is that why for in the fall, the event planning class like doesn't have a professor yet? Okay.
Yeah, if it says TBD, it's most likely going to be the person we're bringing in. Not wholly, we might have to bring in another adjunct or two, just depending on, sometimes when people come in as faculty, they can ask for a course release in their first year to get settled in. And if the person does, we might have to bring in an adjunct for the third class. But yeah, I'll tell you right now, the person will be teaching event planning and intro for the fall. And then for the spring, they'll be teaching issues and trends, and I think I put destination management. And then hopefully if they're teaching a third, they'll be doing the tourism planning and development course as well. Other questions? All right. Well, I will see you guys for our next guest speaker, or our person we're interviewing, which is what is it, on the 20th, I think? Let me make sure. Oh, already.
15th.
Is it the 15th? Is the date?
So do we not come this Thursday then?
Yes. So it really isn't the week is 2 days off. So we're coming Thursday, April 15th will be the next time we'll have a formal setting. And in the meantime, I will be working on videos on the 8th and 13th to upload for you guys.
Gotcha. Cool.
No promises on exactly when they'll be up, but they will be up before the exam. So in case you have to take the exam, they will be up. That's my goal. All right, I'll let you guys go. Have a great couple days. Make sure you get your networking assignment in today. It's due today. And I'll see you guys soon.